right, and we are indeed the Rabyd Nation. All hail Fangs. Welcome to the Rabyd Nation. This is your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist, also known as the Rabyd Atheist. For those of you theists, I'm going to preemptively strike. Quit asking me whether or not I believe in God. It's in the name. It's in the name. So there we go. There we go. But yes, again, thanks again to the mighty Philbert for the Rabyd Nation national anthem. I've always thought a national anthem should have a heavy metal base, so we have one. So there you go. Let's see. Any notes? There is a goal in chat. It's my polite, low-key way of asking for money. And I only do it at the beginning of a stream, and then I forget about it completely. But if we reach that goal, I will wear the hat chosen by the poll. And that helps me pay for the stream and stuff like that. So, and help me pay bills. So there you go. So there's that aspect of it. And today I think we have the Holy Bunny hat is in play, which has special significance for those of the Church of Fangs, because anything spoken with the Holy Hat on becomes official doctrine of some cult offshoot hypocrisy for the Church of Fang. So, and we encourage heresy here. So there you go. Let's see. Tonight we're going to be, I'm moving into part 3 of Paulogia's video. Resurrection Scholar doesn't like my fact checking. I think this will be the last part, no matter how far I get. I wanted to do this one and get to the end of it. Part of it, yes, I'm in this video in the early parts. You have to go back to part 1 of this series and watch that and see my reaction to that. And so there's that part of it. But then there's also, so there's also that aspect of it. But I also, there's some stuff at the end of Paul's video where Habermas and company are kind of going over some other things, and I want to get to that. So I might blitz through this video a little faster than I normally do to get to the end of it. So maybe there's a little bit of repetition, so I can probably do that a little bit too. So, but in the meantime, let's let's get a roll call real quick. Let's see. Fred is always here early. And then Rimmer, who is up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Rimmer, I have decided that you're going to be one of the official saints of the Church of Fangs because of your sleep sacrifices. So there you go. And the Merlin is here. Hey, your notifications work. So there you go. So there you go. But yes, you're going to be an official saint, Rimmer. We'll figure out how to do that at some point. Indian Lake Skeptic. Yes, we have a rock song to get this going. Joshua. Thank you, Joshua. Appreciate it. The Holy Hat Brigade of Antioch. There we go. So there's no rest or sleep for the crew because we're all woke. Okay, there we go. And then Harvey says one hat to rule them all. Yeah, that's quite possible. And Dragon Rider's here. Outstanding. All right, good start to the evening. I do not know if certain people will be here. Some people that normally come here actually have a social life other than myself. So here I am. But let's see. I'm going to pull up Paul here, add him to the stage. Going to pause these guys, turn the volume back on. But I think this is where I was before. I want to keep going through this video because Habermas says some things that, what's a social life? Yeah, I know what you're saying, man. I relate so well. Speaking of sleep sacrifices, I don't know. I haven't seen Paul lately. So, oh, Paul the Russian. Yeah, he's come. I haven't seen him in about a month. No, I thought I saw him on a stream a couple weeks ago. So I have seen him. He is alive, as far as I know, a couple weeks ago. So, and that's the thing with Paul. He's in a worse time zone than you are, Rimmer. So this is like early AM for him. I know that's difficult for some of you that are trying to sleep. So But yes, every once in a while he shows up, and usually if he shows up, remember, it means it's insomnia time. Okay, like he's having trouble sleeping. So so we'll see. We'll see that. We'll see if he shows up. He's been known, so there's that. But yes, all right. Let's get back to this. I think this is where I was. I think so. But if there's overlap, I'll live with it. It's fine.
In the gospel,
or just one of them does that.
And the three biggest named converters of the world: Paul, previous unbeliever; James, the brother of Jesus, previous unbeliever; and Peter, certainly a believer, but he denied his Lord 3 times. And these 3 guys are the guys who are the most sure that they've seen him.
Okay. The fact that Peter denied his Lord 3 times is purely grade A. The Bible tells me so. I really should get Paul's jingle and cue that up. But yes, everything he has said right now, that's only true if and only if you accept the historicity of the Gospels as being absolutely factual, which I don't. And so that's a problem. Okay. These 3 people, supposedly the bigwigs of the early church, believing that they saw, just because they denied the Lord 3 times doesn't mean they can't change their minds. Doesn't mean they can't be fooled later. There are plenty of people that were skeptical of things that became believers in things. So that's just not. So there's that. Yes, it's definitely for the Bible tells you so at that point. So I get your concern. Remember, I am very concerned about a lot of people in a lot of places right now. And in fact, I'm kind of concerned about myself. So in my own place. So there you go. Pope of the Orthodox Church isn't in Antioch. Yes, that's correct. That is correct. Antioch is kind of the Pope place there. So there you go. You have the Eastern Church there. So there we go. Okay, but all of this that Habermas is saying is for the Bible tells you so. And Paul makes good, or just one, it's like, just because this, I don't get why this is so convincing to people that the 3 biggest names in the church that benefited from the church being believers is somehow weird or shocking. I don't understand that at all. So,
and they convinced the others. That's the way this theory works. This particular theory works.
That's correct. All we need is Peter and James to believe him, or at least come on board. Paul had his own conversion thing that had nothing at all to do with what Peter or the 12 were saying, as we've already covered extensively here. The origin of Peter's belief is completely unrelated to Paul's conversion by Paul's own words.
It's not an hallucination theory, but it's closely related. And they convince all of them that it's true. Here's the problem. Those 3 guys, Paul, Peter, and James, according to first century sources, all die as martyrs.
That's not
I don't care that they die as martyrs. Before Paul talks here, I don't care that they died as martyrs. There's a lot of people that die as martyrs. Martyr's death just means you were really convinced of something enough that you were willing to die for it. It doesn't make that something true. I'm sorry, there's a lot of examples of that, and I think Paul's going to give a couple, so I'm going to hold on to that. You don't care what hat I wear as long. Yeah. I was over at Captive Desk, and there's a guy in there asking, it's Saturday night at the Atheist, and the guy's asking if people believe in God. And it's like, it's native. You and I have the same problem. It's like people can't read. You know what words mean, right? So, yeah. It's just I'm the rabid atheist. You're the native atheist. There's Saturday night at the Atheist. There's modern atheism. I mean, there's look up what words mean. Okay. And I'm playing on words on my last name too. So I remember when Prophet of Zod got up on here and he did a video with me in it. And he said, well, he's called the Rabid Atheist, but he's actually kind of chill. And so that's probably the best compliment anybody's ever made, because it's about the truth. I'm redefining the word rabid, I think. So there you go. But yes. But yeah, I don't care that these people sincerely believed, sincere belief is not proof of a resurrection. There's plenty of people that have been sincere believers. Hey, Martin. Good to see you. Did I miss anybody else? I hope I didn't miss anybody else. I hate it. I always feel so guilty when I miss people. And so that's why I keep one eye on Chad all the time. But good to see you, Martin. Let's move on. I think Paul's going to give some examples here of
Problem
stuff.
at all. That would just put Paul and James into the category of people like the 9/11 hijackers who died for a belief they can't personally attest to. This is only a problem if you posit that Paul and James were knowingly lying. But if James believed Peter, then he's a Christian for the same reason Gary's a Christian, and his death is no different than if Gary were to face a similar end.
Now, I know it's true that we cannot prove that all the disciples died as martyrs. But here's the three big guys, the three guys that the whole church hangs on. Peter, Paul, and James, the brother of Jesus. They died for their faith. They didn't question it, as far as we know.
Yes, again, this isn't a problem. In this hypothesis, Peter, Paul, and James were all sincerely convinced.
How do we know they didn't question it? How do you know they didn't fall away later? Okay, time out. I've got a source for my view. What do you have as a source for your recanting?
Okay. Okay. First of all, you're the one that needs a source that says these people were given an opportunity to recant their faith and then didn't do it. You're the one that needs that to prove your. I don't need shit. Okay. I don't believe this stuff. Okay. Like there is no example of any of the apostles having to recant their faith. Okay. Like there's no source that says that. Like this is one of the things that frustrated me as a Christian is I kept looking for historical sources where these apostles had the opportunity to recant their faith and didn't do so. Okay, that does not exist. I'm sorry, Habermas, you need to provide the evidence in a historical source at this point where these people were given an opportunity to recant their faith and refused. Okay, you don't even really have that. I do not understand why Habermas thinks this is such a gotcha, because it's like, I don't have to provide proof that they didn't have this moment. You have to provide proof that they did. Okay, so there's that. I mean, yeah, Merlin, yeah, the Merlin the Eighth, yeah, it would be really clunky. You should just stay with what you got. In fact, the makes it clunky, but other than I get what you're doing it for. Because I'm sure there's other people that claim to be Merlin, and you got to get rid of the false claims. So I get it. So there you go. Merlin, the magic atheist. There you go. Yeah, they can't. There's also the fact that there's a large part of people that says, maybe Peter and Jesus and Paul and James are right up there with Hercules and Pericles and all the us's, the isses, as Phil talks about, a lot of Issuses, Achilles, and all the rest of them. It's like, did these people actually exist is a legitimate question, because that's, once again, for the Bible tells me so, for a lot of the evidence for this, and the Bible is under scrutiny. It's when I deal with the minimal facts, I remind people that there's two major things that are problems with these being facts. Number one, we don't know who the gospel writers are, actually. And two, for each individual story in the Gospels, guess what? We also don't know the source for that information. So, because neither of those things are given in the Gospels. And so it's quite possible that the Gospels are more mythology written by a group of people that believe the myth, right in line with anything else. People believe the Odyssey. At one point, they probably thought it was a true story. Okay, it's like, it doesn't make it so. The Iliad, same thing. It's like you gotta do that. So, yeah, he's doing the burden of proof switching. In fact, I think this is why he wrote the books, because he's really, at the end of this video, he's going to take the tack. I've proven the resurrection. You need to disprove it. And it's amazing how many people are going pre-supper and trying to reverse the burden of proof, because I think that's their problem. Hey, Anne-Marie. And Triple E is here as well. Outstanding. All right. But yeah, let's continue on. I want to zip through some of this part because I've covered some of this before, and I want to get to some of the end part.
I'm not positing recanting. What are you talking about? Why did you add recanting in here? All the flavors of minimal witnesses allow for Peter, Paul, and James to die while believing. The bigger problem is that none of these three would even have a chance to recant, since all three were political murders. The killers didn't care one bit about what they professed. Ananus wanted James's job and influence, while Nero wanted to blame Christians for a fire. This is weak stuff you're peddling, Gary.
Well, I don't have a
Thank
source.
you.
I just said what if. Okay, then if you can't show your view is true, don't take off on my evidence by your lack of evidence. See, at every step of this, there are claims to have data. And when someone says put up or shut up, there's no real data there.
Again, what are you talking about? The stories in the Gospels are also claims. They're older claims. They're in written form, and they were popular enough that thousands of people took time to copy them so that they could still exist. But that doesn't make them evidence. They're still just claims. They're not data.
But there's no data.
1,600 years ago, Augustine, he lived 354 to 430. He said, and I just came across this nugget talking about the perennial doubter. He said,
Yeah, before we get into that, I want to thank Decibel 19. Let's see. See, like you, I'm on the spectrum working at being a writer. However, I don't have the social exposure, thick skin like you do. Would you be up to having me on talking religion, philosophy, and the like for my growth? Yeah, you can comment away. I try to have several conversations during the stream at the same time. Sometimes I'm actually successful, but I will comment on this. I have a thick skin for two reasons, and I think it's because, one, I've learned to deal with my autism better, and I've always been that way. Like, people can say whatever they want about me. I don't give a shit. It's probably part of one of my defiant disorders that I haven't identified yet. And then the other one is I'm a Stoic, and the Stoic philosophy helps me a lot as an autistic person because it allows me to deal with my anxieties a lot better, because the biggest thing with that is I can only control what I can actually control. And you can't control criticism, but you're more than welcome to comment away any concerns, and I'll see if I take the time to answer them. So, but yes, but thank you so much, Decibel. I appreciate the donation too. It's good stuff. But yes, maybe sometime, that might be a great topic for either like the next deconversion hangout. Like I would gladly talk about that problem with people, but it's also a great topic for Monday, just to open forum. So when we do the fireside chat, but yes, yeah, I get you though. I used to have problems with people being critical, and I'm just like, now I don't give a damn. And it's a large part because I realize there's a lot of things I can't control. I can only control my writing. I can only control my content creation, Decibel. The rest of it is out of my control. And so there's no point in wasting emotional energy on it. So, does that always work? No, but it's very helpful when you do remember it. So, but yes, but Paul here is getting into this guy. I'm going to rewind this a little bit. But Paul made a great point about claims and stuff like that. So yeah, he's getting really pathetic here. Okay. And Paul's pointing it out. It's weak sauce. It's like, no, you haven't produced the evidence that this is the case, that these people died for their faith. You haven't produced that. That is not facts and evidence. Okay. If a courtroom person a lawyer got control of this, they'd say, what evidence have you produced that these people were even killed for their faith? You haven't done that. And so he's trying to say he's proven that, but he has not. He has not. So, yeah, but yeah, there you go. And so he just goes on about this.
But that doesn't make them evidence. They're still just claims. They're not data.
But there's no data.
1,600 years ago, Augustine, he lived 354 to 430. He said, and I just came across this nugget talking about the perennial doubter. He said, what then can I adduce to convince those who refuse to believe? They refuse to believe these facts, in other words, the gospel, unless we can show them or prove by ocular demonstration or adequate testimony. Okay, ocular demonstration. Show me something I can see. Give me adequate testimony. But when we do, they say, not that, not that.
I'm sorry. What exactly was forcing?
No, you haven't done that. Okay, that's the problem. Like a lot of believers think that they have done their work and presented evidence, and then the atheist and non-believer, the skeptic, is just being stubborn. No, your evidence wouldn't hold up in court. Okay, it wouldn't even get past the early stages of providing evidence. It would be dismissed. It's hearsay. Okay, you have so much hearsay. The Gospels are hearsay. Okay, and when I say that, it pisses off a lot of people, but I'm sorry, it fits all the definitions of hearsay. Okay, and it does, in my questionable witnesses series, I have constantly pointed out that even by the biblical's low bar standard of 2 or 3 witnesses, the Gospels fail a lot of times because they just don't have the stuff. And even by those. So there's that. there's that. So, okay, I want to rewind Paul's response just a bit here.
Say, not that, not that.
I'm sorry. What exactly was 4th century Augustine showing people to demonstrate the resurrection for their own eyes? What was this ocular demonstration he was giving? And can you show it to me now? No one's ever offered me something to see, and I hate to break it to you, but you definitionally weren't offering adequate testimony if the listener didn't become convinced. It's right in the name. The testimony was inadequate. Maybe it was adequate for you to believe, but what's actually convincing is in the ear of the beholder. Now, it's my contention that testimony alone is never sufficient to establish a miracle. It's always more likely that a person is lying or sincerely mistaken, so I'd work a little more on those ocular demonstrations. I'm looking forward to that.
So if you're
Yes, I am too. I would love to see some stuff that I can actually see that proves the apologist's point. Like I would absolutely, hey, come on, do that. Show me something. Okay. Because I'm, like if Augustine was actually saying we have ocular demonstration and we have adequate testimony, well, then give it. Okay. The problem with testimonial evidence is it's not convincing to everybody. Just because somebody tells a story that something happened doesn't make it true. Are you that simply naive to accept just testimony witness? I do not understand this mentality at all anymore, because there's plenty of people that will give testimony of miracles in other religions and faith. If I go around the horn to every religion that there is, they all have testimonial witness. So how do you prove one is true and the other one's false? How do you do that? Okay, like where is that? Okay, so yeah, so there's that aspect of it. So I don't get what Habermas and what this other guy was driving at about Augustine. Augustine didn't provide ocular evidence back then, and he certainly didn't give adequate testimony back then. Otherwise, everybody would have believed after his testimony, and he was kind of a weirdo anyway. Yeah, sorry about that, Brent. I actually want to get to the end of this because I think I know why Habermas is doing what he's doing, and it's dishonest as hell. The fact that he's appearing with Turek kind of tells me all I need to know. So, but there's that. Yeah. And some of you are talking about autism. That's a issue that's close to my heart since my own diagnosis. And yeah, it took me like 40 years to figure out what was quote unquote wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with us. We're just different. We're wired different. And, if there is a God, that's his fault. And if there isn't one, then that's just the way it is. And really what we need more of is more education about it. And so, yes, but it's helped me immensely in daily life now. And I don't feel like I'm a weirdo because I don't want to be social anymore. Like there are days I just don't want to be social. And so I stay home, and I don't feel like that's a weirdo thing to do anymore. So, so there's that. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Let's see if I catch up. Yeah, I think he's trying to make a buck. I did notice something else, Anne-Marie. If you go to Amazon right now, all of Habermas's, the 3 volumes that are out are on 50% sale. And that tells me something. I'm wondering if the reason he's reacting to Paulogia and me and a few others so harshly is we're pointing out as people who don't have terminal degrees what this is, which is bullshit. Okay. And we're pointing out that volume 3 was not as advertised. We're pointing out like this isn't working. And Habermas is just doubling down here. You can hear it in Paul's voice too. He's getting frustrated when he's doing this video because he's like, you're putting out the same BS with the same lack of evidence. And then you're still like doubling down on this thing. And that's like, yeah, we like order sometimes. You're all individuals. I'm not. Hey, Depocalypse. Yeah, it's 50% off already. Like it. I was looking at it. I'm like, man, it's cost like $150 to buy this thing. And I look it up on Amazon. You can get it for $75 right now, all 3 volumes. And it was a temptation, but I'm like, I don't have that kind of money right now. I just put a new muffler on my car and had like $1,500 worth of dental work done. And like, my reserves are a little tapped out. So yeah, but it's a bargain price now. And I think that's because Paul and me and many others, including many Christians, I would add, are going, Habermas, we've been waiting for this, and this is your life's work, and this is shit. Okay. And he doesn't want to accept that. And that's really, really the problem. Okay. It's really one of those things that is very, very problematic. And I think that's, it's not the Steam Autumn sale for gamers. It's Habermas's 3 volumes on Amazon are 50% off right now. And I'm having to wonder if it's not the effect of people being critical of it and realizing what it really is. Like I postulated this way at the beginning that this 4-volume set is designed to sit on the shelves of pastors. And when people come in and say, where's the proof for the resurrection? They can just point to these 4. Habermas, the great scholar Habermas did this. Like he's not a great scholar. The first volume, when I read the table of contents, this is all the traditional trope arguments for the resurrection that have existed forever. And he threw some interesting ones. And it's like near-death experiences are part of that and a few others. And I'm like, that's not, and then when he deals with the criticism, well, I just don't see how any of these theories are right. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in this video, I think. So I want to get there. So but yes, you can hear Paul getting frustrated, and I'm getting frustrated too. Yeah. So there you go.
You're one of those rare people, really rare, who can be solved by ocular experiences, and you lost somebody close to you. Tell that person you could be with them someday.
Hang tight. We've got to take a break. More on the American Family Radio Network with our very special guest, Dr. Gary Habermas. Stay tuned.
Oops, sorry, Gary. We don't have time for your little advice to grieving people. They can wait. American Family Radio has bills to pay. Spoiler, this was not revisited after the commercial break.
I got to ask you this, Gary.
Okay, I got to say something about, of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. Because he was about to fall into his own trap. Because if Habermas starts talking about grieving hallucinogenic experiences, he has to admit that it's quite possible that Peter had one of those. Or Paul had something similar on his way to Damascus, where he was being grief-stricken about all the people he's put in prison. Or many of the other people, the disciples. Like if there were 500 disciples, you could easily have 50 people, based on the stats, have those kind of experiences today. Like if you had 500 people really close to somebody and grieving over something, there's literally a possibility that 50 people could see them after they were dead through a hallucinogenic experience. This isn't a group thing. It's like, and so they pulled him out of that family radio and said, oh, we got bills to pay. And then they never revisited. And there's damn good reason, because they were heading down a path that if I'm sitting there, I'm saying, no, wait a minute, you just proved my point. Okay, so there's a... Hey, Earl. Good to see you. Yes, we are all weirdos here. There's a lot of autistic people here tonight, Earl. So we should feel sort of kind of at home. That's one of the perils of autism, is I sometimes don't feel at home around autistic people either. But so, so there you go. But it's the lovely Earl is here. I always want to acknowledge her, the lap in which our Lord naps. So our visual prophetess is here. So there you go. Yeah, we did mention weirdos offhand. But yes, but there's Paul was right to point this out, that they did not revisit Habermas giving advice to grieving people, and probably rightly so. So there you go. Oh, but here we have it. Another picture of Turek and Habermas together. I don't know if Habermas realizes this, but it probably downplays his credibility a little bit. Turek lost me in the introduction to his one book that he wrote with the other guy, when he classified atheism as religious secularism. And I'm like, you don't even know how definitions work, bro. I'm moving on. So, so there's that. But there we go. I definitely approve. Earl is approved. She's pre-approved on this channel. Hey, Jova, good to see you. Autism is a superpower, except for when it isn't. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was once asked if I wanted a cure for it, and I said no. It makes up a lot of who I am. I don't know if I'd be the same person if I wasn't autistic. So I probably would be. So, like, it's a part of who I am now. So good to see you, Joe. And thank you very much. We're up to 4. Oh man, I'm only 31 minutes in the stream. So yeah, he's something else. Like, I really feel that Turek is a shill. Like, I think he knows it's bullshit, but he keeps doing it because it makes him money. So, and I think Habermas is starting to enter that quantity for me too. Like, a lot of apologists have moved over. Like, you have to know that this is bullshit. Okay. So, and yet, nope. So there's that.
Because I was struck in reading through volume 3, again, volume 3 on the resurrection scholarly perspective. So you're just reading in alphabetical order what these scholars think on certain topics related to the resurrection. And I couldn't believe how many of them were saying that they believed that Jesus was a miracle worker. So my question is, since they don't believe in miracles, what do they think he was doing?
Okay, that's a great question. A little bit of explanation.
Mm-hmm.
One critical scholar, one of these guys way to the left, doesn't believe in miracles, but he says this. He says, to my knowledge, the entire critical community believe that, and they don't usually say the words miracle worker. They usually say healer. Jesus was a healer and an exorcist.
Well, that's a huge claim. That's big enough that I'm going to have to get my copy of volume 3 to see what he's talking about. All right. Here's the section on Jesus as miracle worker and exorcist. And here's the very first entry. Beelbein Eddy observed that virtually everyone today recognizes that Jesus was considered to be an exorcist and a worker of miracles. Well, of course, everyone concedes that Jesus was considered to be an exorcist.
Yes. This is the part that Habermas completely left out, is that everybody considered Jesus to be an exorcist and a worker of miracles. And that's a modern day assessment. Whether they felt that way back 2,000 years ago when supposedly all the events took place, yeah. Your people have cometh. They are here. So yeah, it's bad. I couldn't believe that, Paul, this was so easy for Paul to do. All he had to do is pull up the guy's own 3rd volume, pull this up, and it's like, you do realize that there's a difference between a person actually saying somebody's a miracle worker or an exorcist, or saying that they were considered to be a miracle worker or exorcist. Those are 2 very different statements, simply by the word considered. And I do not know how Habermas even says all this crap with a straight face that he's about to say. So here we go.
A miracle worker. I agree he was considered to be one. That's vastly different than saying scholars believe he was a miracle worker. This is a very, very important distinction. I can go through each entry in this section. Dunn highlights that Jesus was widely regarded by his contemporaries as a miracle worker. Ehrman, Jesus was perceived as a miracle worker. Habermas, wait, are you citing your own positions? Okay. Anyhow, you get the point. Even Gary's careful paraphrasing can't hide that scholars agree on miracle belief, not on actual miracles. And now you're going to let Frank seem silly because he didn't notice this.
And you go, wait a minute, you don't believe in demons? And the guy goes, of course I don't. And what about healing? Yeah, I think Jesus did that. So this one scholar said that virtually 100% of critics on the far left believe he was a healer and an exorcist.
The closest.
Okay. It's not that they believe that he was a healer or an exorcist. They believe that that's what people thought he was. Okay. Like Habermas did a little bit of bait and switch there. Like he completely ignored the idea of considered or whatever, which is in his book. But when he just talked about it there, he said, oh, all these critical scholars believe that Jesus was a miracle worker and an exorcist or something like that. No, they acknowledge that a lot of people believe that at the time, that he was considered to be those things. He leaves out the word considered, and it's dishonest for him to do so. That is straight up dishonesty by Habermas. Habermas should have mentioned the fact, like, he is completely misrepresenting this part. Like, these people say, oh yeah, we acknowledge that Jesus was considered to be a miracle worker or an exorcist or somebody who raised people from the dead, or even whatever miracle you want to put. But he doesn't use the word considered here, and it's actually very dishonest for him to do so. And I will call him out as a guy with a master's degree in theology. I'm calling out that as dishonest representation. Like, if I was still a Christian, I'd be beating this horse by saying, no, bro, you completely dishonorably did something here. So it's like, you can't do that. So it's like, it was very, very dishonest of him the way he put this. And I'd call out Habermas for, like, you didn't do the exact wording that these people are saying. They're not believing that Jesus was an actual miracle worker. They're not believing that he was an actual exorcist. What they believe is irrelevant. We understand that that's what he was considered, but that doesn't make it the truth. Oh, it looks like somebody has pushed things over the goal. Thank you very much. Let's see. We got Joshua here. This Patty with Turk's glass looked like something you'd wear in eye protection play racquetball back in the 90s. Yeah, there's some validity there. And here's to reaching the stream goal, which we have. And by a large margin, every Saturday this seems to happen. The Holy Bunny hat comes out, and here we go. I don't know if it does anything for my credibility as a scholar, but there it is. So, yes. You hate them. What do you hate? You have to cite yourself in your own positions as evidence, the consensus of consensus reference, but it tells me you have no case. I don't even like my own comments. Yeah, it is weird, Earl. But there, in scholarship, there is the liberal scholar, and then there's the conservative scholar, particularly in biblical studies. I know that's weird. Like when I went to Asbury was considered a moderate seminary with conservative leanings. In other words, they were conservative. Really applies in biblical scholarship to the idea you still believe the resurrection was a thing. You still believe the Bible's true. Like the closer you are on that spectrum, the more it is you believe the Bible's true. Whereas liberals, like, we're looking for the metaphorical meaning behind the scriptures, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, they do that too. That's, to religious people, this left-right paradigm just never seems to give up on them. So there you go. Yes, it's hat time. There you go. Hey, Elizabeth, good to see you. It's okay you're late. We're getting to the good stuff anyway. So, but yes, like I'm going to call Habermas on this part as being completely scholastically dishonest. He's misrepresenting what those scholars said in this little speech he gave. In the book, he doesn't do it so much because he uses the word considered, but in this little last clip, he was just completely dishonest. And so it's like, nope, that's scholastic dishonest. They did not consider Jesus a miracle worker or an exorcist. They understand and they reveal that, like, they know that people considered Jesus to be that. Okay, that's what they considered him to be. It's not that they actually believe that he was those things. It's that he considered it. Yes. The far left. I don't know, Earl. I can't read Gary's mind either. Elizabeth said it for me, but yes, he wanted to put in the far left comment, and it's, oh, well, this guy, even on the far left, believes that Jesus was a miracle worker. No, he doesn't believe that Jesus was a miracle. He just understands that people perceive Jesus as a miracle worker, and that's a totally different thing. Totally different thing. But Habermas just completely misrepresented that guy. So there you go.
I can find to Gary's paraphrase here is Blackburn comments on the near unanimity of a positive view on Jesus' exorcisms and healing miracles among contemporary scholars. Even Boltman acknowledged it. Blackburn notes that although unanimity rarely occurs in academia, that Jesus acted as an exorcist and healer can easily be described as the consensus of the modern period. More importantly, Gary's very next sentence is, yet the consensus appears to evaporate when moving to certain secondary issues. These secondary issues are, of course, were these actual supernatural events or natural phenomena given miraculous interpretation? Should they be understood as psychological healings, psychosomatic cures, or genuine divine interventions? How do we distinguish between what actually happened versus later legendary embellishment? You know me, and of course I just had to track down this essay in the footnotes. Here's what it actually says, as Blackburn quotes Boltman. The Christian community was convinced that Jesus had performed miracles and told a good many miracle stories about him. Most of the wonder tales contained in the Gospels are legendary. At least they have legendary embellishments. This is another case of Gary exaggerating and conflating.
So,
yes, okay, I want to stop right there because what Gary just did there is he very much exaggerated what the information was. And he left out a lot of words like, yes, we agree that Jesus was considered an exorcist or he acted as an exorcist and miracle worker. Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of guys that do that today. And I know for a flat fact that they're frauds, that they're as fraudulent as anything else. You know, like it's like they are snake oil salesmen that practice miracles, practice exorcism, and they're full of shit. Okay. Just because I think that Jesus might have existed and acted as a miracle worker and exorcist doesn't mean that I actually feel that he was actually doing miracles and exorcisms. And Habermas is absolutely putting his own belief and superimposing his own belief on top of these comments that these people make and trying to say, oh yeah, but everybody believes that Jesus was a miracle worker. No, we believe that he acted as a miracle worker if we believe he exists. I have a comment about that later. So there you go. Yeah. Yes. Conservative fundamentalist. You know, if you think of conservative as the fundamentalist, I really believe the Bible, end of it. That's hyper conservative. And when hyper liberal is I'm getting some spiritual meaning out of Christianity, you know, like woo type meaning, then yeah, those are the two extreme spectrums that he's talking about. But in this particular case, he's talking about a guy who doesn't actually probably believe. Okay, like he might be a Christian, but he doesn't really believe in the miracles. So yeah, you're getting it right there. So yes, it's so when Habermas uses these terms, he's defining people based on their biblical belief. Okay, and the level of their biblical belief. So there you go. But yes, so there we go. Let's keep going.
these guys really do think healing takes place. But on the demons, you go, you think he was an exorcist? Absolutely. Yeah, but you don't believe in demons. No, absolutely not. But you think Jesus was an exorcist? Yes. Would you explain that for me? Okay.
Okay. Once again, I'm going to preempt Paul on this. Paul's going to nail this pretty good too, but it's like, no, dude, you are conflating two things. Whether I believe that Jesus acted or was considered to be an exorcist is a very different thing than him actually being one. Okay. So I'm not trying to be rude here, but Habermas is absolutely double speaking here. He's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense that you people believe he was an exorcist, okay, and cast out demons, but you don't believe in demons or miracles. That's not what people are saying. He's completely misrepresented what these scholars are saying in order to make them look silly. And it's really very straw mannish. It's absolute bullshit. Okay. So he's absolutely doing a number here where he is completely misrepresenting what these scholars are saying. And so I'm going to call him out again on scholastic dishonesty because he is not representing what these people are actually saying correctly. So there's that. There's that.
And the critic guy way over on the left side, maybe Jesus, some I remember, would say, I don't believe in demons. Therefore, I don't think Jesus cast any of them out. but Jesus had tremendous influence on people like a psychiatrist or a psychologist might have today. And if they were bound by something that today we would call psychiatric, depression, anxiety, whatever, they could be healed after dealing with him, especially if they came back to him a few times, quote unquote, they had a few sessions with him. And he goes, I don't believe in demons, but here's the reason, here's the key. I think he healed. The guy would say, I think Jesus flat out healed like a counselor can heal today. But here's why I think he was an exorcist. There's no demons, and he never cast a demon out. However, examples like the ones reported in the Gospels, either the example itself or one like it is true. In other words, that's a sense in which he was an exorcist, that Jesus very much did things in the Gospels or just like the things in the Gospels. So in other words, those statements in the Gospels, even guys who don't think the Gospels are reliable, they think a lot of those exorcisms without the demon part, they think the scenario where the person was healed, they are true historical accounts. That's a sense in which they think he was an exorcist, or the sense in which they think he was a real healer, like a
Okay, so I'm going to comment on this at this point. I don't believe that, okay, because I have large problems with the historicity of these accounts anyway. Okay, so, and mostly because of the gospel sources, and the sources for the stories in the gospels is, I don't know. So, yeah, I don't understand. You know, I get that some people might explain it that way. Maybe some scholars that are still Christians might explain it that way. But I'm not a Christian, and I can look at this and go, nope, it might not have even happened. So, yeah, there's that. You need a med bed? Okay. All right, yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. I'm down with that. Yes, Holy Kool-Aid does a great one where he explains why some of these demon possessions might have actually been medical conditions that were mistaken as demonic possessions. So, Earl, your simple answer is somebody gave it to later. It's an end times ideology that you can vote for somebody that's not morally your standard. But if they bring about the end times, then they're still being used by God. So a lot of people, like when Trump was first elected, they called him the modern day Cyrus to the Israelis kind of thing. And if you look up that ideology, you'll figure that out. That it's mostly an end times thing. So like they're like, I agree with you. Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Donald Trump wouldn't even be considered as a Republican, like even a candidate. They would have, no. Got too many marriages. He doesn't live up to our morals. Yeah, he's done. They would have never even considered him 25 years ago. So I don't know. He didn't have that much power. Yes, exorcism is a form of suggestion. You never see a Christian in rehab. Yeah, source. Yeah, trust me, bro. Yeah, that's kind of the way it's going. Epileptic seizures are one of the things that people mistook for demonic possession back in the day. So, yes, they blame themselves for it becoming worse. Yes, this is exactly what happens, Decibel. Exactly. So, but yes, Habermas here he's still not understanding the fact that some people can consider Jesus to be these things without actually believing in them. He seemed to have a hard time understanding that. So he's either, I hate to say it, I think he's being very scholastically dishonest in his representation of these people. So there you go.
could be a healer.
Okay, well, this is a bit of a distinction without a difference as far as I'm concerned. This would be a debate among people who agree that the Gospels definitely contain legendary development, but aren't sure if these healing stories were completely invented or grew from a kernel of truth. All this tells us is that there is reasonable evidence that Jesus was regarded as a healer, and that some skeptics enjoy what-if speculations granting some fragments of historicity as an intellectual exercise. Now,
couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm going to leave it there, but that was absolutely perfect.
Now, since I'm already pulling from a dozen different videos from Gary's Volume 3 tour, I'm going to include one segment from a response to his interview with Sean from friend of the channel, James Fodor. His live streams routinely contain amazing insights and are criminally underwatched. probably because they are many, many hours long and happen at strange times.
Someone's asked why you didn't address the cognitive dissonance theory in your second volume, where you specifically have naturalistic hypotheses. In the third volume, you address it in a different way, how other scholars respond to it. So you do address cognitive dissonance. But more importantly, if you had 2 or 3 criticisms for that view, and maybe just clarify for people, what exactly is a cognitive dissonance naturalist hypothesis? And what are maybe a couple of reasons why you just don't find it compelling?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I didn't cover it in very much detail in volume 2. And I will say that in volume 3, I've got pro and con scholars. Most scholars don't like it. It's not a very popular theory. Somebody throws it in when they can't make the swoon theory work or they can't make hallucinations work. They throw it in like, I got my fingers crossed that you haven't heard this one before. I don't consider it a major theory. Here's a little definition. Cognitive dissonance can be true. I don't know anybody who argues it can't be the case, but it doesn't describe the resurrection. Cognitive dissonance is a view that is often applied to the Seventh-day Adventists or the Jehovah's Witnesses or groups like that who made prophecies. The famous one was 1844 for the Seventh-day Adventists, and they sold their goods, wait for Jesus to return, and he didn't come, but they sold their homes.
This is called the Great Disappointment in 1844.
Sold everything. And what happened when Jesus did return? Almost always the move will be, we refigured the numbers. It's next month. So you go and do it next month. And he still doesn't return. So we would think these people would turn and walk away, right? Well, many of them did. But cognitive dissonance says, no, some of them bore down and got even more radical. In most of those cases, dissonance theory says that many of these people returned to the faith with a new interpretation and a greater depth of faith. Maybe the disciples were pretty good believers before Jesus died, but then Jesus died and they were...
I saw the discussion, Earl. I know it makes no sense, but you need to remember you're dealing with religion. It doesn't have to make sense. Okay, like there are some people that believe that our current occupant of the White House is indeed the Antichrist, and he's fooling a lot of people. There's some fundamentalists that don't like Trump. Okay, they think he's the Antichrist. So it's when it comes to end time beliefs, you need to understand brains and reason go right out the window. Okay, and once you figure that part out about end time beliefs, they make a little bit more sense. You're trying to make a logical, rational explanation of why people believe certain people are certain things with end times theology. Good luck. So I write my letter to Santa Claus, basically ending this with, sorry, dude, I guess I'll buy my own stuff again this year. So there's that, but yes, and like this doesn't make it, like we're talking about cognitive dissonance theory in relation to the resurrection, and Habermas basically dismisses it, but I don't know why you would. Like there's going to be some people that have cognitive dissonance. There's people that have cognitive dissonance to this day about Christianity as a whole. Like you can show them all the things that are wrong with it. Like when we look at the guy with the ark in northern Kentucky, I think he's said flat out, he's been presented all the more scientific evidence for evolution, and he still doesn't believe it. And he's doubled down. The idea that cognitive dissonance doesn't play a part in this, in the possibility of what happened with the resurrection, that's just nonsense. It absolutely fits. Gary Habermas doesn't deal with it because he doesn't really have a good response to it. Okay, if you're going to be an honest book, like his second volume is supposed to be dealing with all the backlash, pushing back against all the theories about what the resurrection could have been. If you don't include one, that's a fairly, and he said, I don't think it's a very popular theory. He's not getting it. Okay. And James here, who Paul is highlighting, what a great guy. Like I hadn't heard of him before until this video. And yes. And so there you go. There you go. So it's like he's going to point out, rightly so, that this isn't about one theory dominating everything. It's like you have some of the disciples that stay because of cognitive dissonance. You have others that have had hallucinatory experiences. You have others that are being influenced by, the apostles that have said they've had the experiences and have influence. Habermas seems to think you get to knock one of these, you knock them off one by one. What he's not understanding is everything works together in these groups. I saw this in the Pentecostal church all the time. You'd have the person that's always having miracles happen to them because that's what and then other people want that miracle to have them. And when it doesn't, they have cognitive dissonance about, it'll happen to me eventually. Like on and on it goes. I mean, the rapture thing, I think somebody mentioned that. Yeah, like the rapture thing on September 23rd. They just moved the date up. That's cognitive dissonance. That's a Christian doing this stuff. Okay, it's the idea that cognitive dissonance has nothing to do with Christianity or the resurrection. that's a bold-faced claim that I would like Habermas to prove. Okay, he's basically saying that I didn't deal with it really because I didn't really think it was a big deal. I'm sorry, it's all over the place, all over the place. Okay, like, I'm sorry, there's a lot of Christians that are Christians knowing the truth, knowing the facts. Like, I do not know how some of these people maintain their Christianity when they know all the facts. Okay, other than cognitive dissonance. Like, yeah, so there's, hey, John. So, yeah. Yeah, you forgot that part. Yeah, they're scrambling to find a reason that they should be wrong. This just happened. Habermas mentions it, and it just happened. Why is it not possible that somebody could say, well, your evidence is a little flimsy there, Peter, for the resurrection? You just say you saw him. Did you, what other, it's like, couldn't you have been imagining it? Oh, no, you double down. Okay, like the idea that cognitive dissonance isn't a valid theory just that just makes me mad, because it absolutely is. Every religious cult, we just saw an example of it with this September 23rd thing. And now the guys, I got the date wrong by 2 weeks. And they double down on this shit instead of realizing, hey, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Maybe the whole thing's BS. Okay. I've survived so many rapture predictions since I was a little boy now that I think I deserve like several cups of coffee at somewhere. Like, yes, Ken Ham does this. Yeah, Ken Ham, he has openly said he's been presented like all the evidence for evolution more than what he deals with. And he's seen it. And he says, I know I've seen all the evidence, but I still don't believe it. Like, I still believe that God created the world. Like, the evidence is convincing enough to him that, yeah, it's a valid theory. He's basically admitting that, but he's like doubling down. Cognitive dissonance. The idea that cognitive dissonance isn't a part of any religion. It's just like somehow you can claim a special exception for the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that somehow there's no cognitive dissonance in that. That just amazes me. Just as amazes me. It's just like, how, Habermas, do you even say that with a straight face? You have to be pretty deluded to think that it's not a possibility with the resurrection. I'm sorry, it's a very real possibility that particularly when Christianity came to the end of that first generation, they're all dying off and they're remembering the words of Jesus. Some of you will still be here when I come back again. And then when the last one dies, it's like, how do we make this work? And what you see in the Gospels and later Christian writings in like the 2nd century is exactly that. The cognitive dissonance takes over. I personally think like the book of Hebrews is a cognitive dissonance book. Like, the predictions haven't come true. And so all the, my whole Heroes of Faith series was about that, where I'm like, faith basically is, even though all these promises haven't taken place and they haven't come in true, we're still going to believe in this stuff. We're still going to believe it. Okay. And we're going to try to make it work. This is what happens. The idea, I'm mad about this one with Habermas. It's like, dude, you should have dealt with this theory. And the problem and the reason you really didn't deal is not because it's a minor theory, is because it's all over the place in resurrection belief. And if you had to deal with it, you're going to have to spend like several chapters doing so. So, yeah. Getting flat fingers. There you go. Oh, see you later, Wolf. But yeah, go get some sleep, man. I know my European and Russian and Ukrainian and all those guy fans, I feel for you. You're up late. Rimmer, all of you. You're all saints. You're all saints in the Church of Fangs. So there you go. For giving up your sleep. There you go.
Fighting for fear of the Jews. So they're in a bad state, despair, depression, everything. But then out of the ashes, somebody breaks forth with this. Maybe he's alive in heaven, like Jesus took his blood into the Holy of Holies. And when the disciples went out, and you're the guy that wrote the book on how many of them were martyred. And of course, we know that for the big three, Paul and James, the brother of Jesus, and Peter, we have 1st century references.
Paul wasn't a disciple of Jesus, despite what the apologists will somehow keep telling you, that somehow he counts in all of these numbers. Paul didn't know Jesus while he was alive.
Valid point. Very valid point. Paul was not a direct disciple of Jesus, and he had his conversion experience supposedly on the Damascus Road. So he actually doesn't account as like one of the followers of Jesus. And these apologists conveniently do ignore this point, and they need to stop ignoring it.
And only came to Christianity several years later, so he's not really relevant to these discussions. But anyway, yeah, so Gary's done an all right job at explaining cognitive dissonance. The idea is that when there is an event that contradicts a deeply held belief that they've had, that introduces a state called cognitive dissonance, where there are these two ideas that stand in tension, and people don't like it when that happens, and so they try to resolve the dissonance. One method to do that, which has been documented many times, is to essentially find an explanation within their worldview that accounts for why the failed prophecy or the event contrary to what they'd expected. One method by which this often occurs that I discuss in my book, Unreasonable Faith, is a spiritualization, where an event that was initially supposed to be physical, observable, and public, like the return of Jesus, is reinterpreted to be something spiritual and not observable. Now, in my view, this perfectly describes what happens in the case of Jesus. Jesus was thought by his disciples to be the Jewish Messiah, whose role, as described in the Old Testament, was to overthrow the Romans, free Israel, and restore the kingdom. That was supposed to be a very public and verifiable event. None of those things happened. Instead, Jesus was killed by the Romans. His followers, at least some of them, reinterpreted what the Messiah would do, at least in the first coming. So they invented this idea of a second coming when all those things will happen as described in the Old Testament. But
Yes, this is exactly kind of what happened. This is why you get the pseudo-Pauline letters, which are pretty clearly not written by Paul, where all of a sudden the church needs a second coming, afterlife, a rapture, what would later be defined as a rapture or a resurrection later, that the church had to have. And this is also why you get some of these later pseudo-Pauline writings. All of a sudden the church needs to get organized. Like during its apocalyptic movement days, it didn't need organization. Jesus was coming back tomorrow. And now all of a sudden, we need to have bishops. We need to have overseers. We need to have all this other stuff. And it's because of the cognitive dissonance has caused them to move from the state, one state to another. Like we know everything our founders said didn't come to pass. And so now we're going to find some way to continue the movement and continue it going forward. That could also have happened during the resurrection when people investigated further that maybe some of these resurrection claims that some of the people were making were false. They would say, oh, but I still believe in the resurrection. I just got to figure out a different way. Or it became a spiritual thing to them or whatever. The idea that cognitive dissonance doesn't affect the resurrection itself is laughable. And for Habermas to make that statement, that's just laughable. Okay, it's like, dude, the fact that the reason you dismissed it is because it's very easily applicable to what happened with the early church, that a lot of these early apostles and disciples had a lot of cognitive dissonance. They invested a lot of time in it. There's a sunk cost fallacy kicking in for them, and they just kept with it. So, yeah. Yeah, Pompey the Great did go into the temple, and there was nothing in the Holy of Holies. I know Rimmer had his own theory about the Holy of Holies, so there you go. That's probably actually more valid and actually probably more real, Rimmer. So there you go.
First coming, those things kind of did happen as well. He did restore the kingdom, so to speak, but it was the kingdom of God, right? My kingdom is not of this world sort of thing. So it was a spiritualization and reinterpretation. So I think cognitive dissonance theory very well accounts for what happened in the aftermath of Jesus' death. Now, it doesn't account for everything. Cognitive dissonance by itself doesn't explain.
Okay, yeah, I want to make that point too. It doesn't account for everything, but it's a pretty damn good explanation of why Christianity was so successful. Because when the initial founders and the initial apocalyptic movement failed, they were able to use their cognitive dissonance and reason their way to continuing forward. And that's what cognitive dissonance does. It allows you to continue to believing, even though the evidence is right in your face, that what the other people said was false. So Jesus botches the prediction about coming back in a generation. So what? Maybe that was just metaphorical. Maybe the people back then misunderstood him. On and on and on and on and on. So, yeah. So there's that. So, you have that. I don't know. The idea that cognitive dissonance doesn't explain in any way the early growth of the church, that it absolutely does. Okay, and it still explains why the church continues to exist. There's plenty of people that have gone through the deconversion process and come out still believers. And my usual thought is, well, I'm kind of glad they still went through the process, but at the same time, it's cognitive dissonance. Like I don't want to accept that the evidence against my faith is overwhelming, so I'm going to hold on to it and keep it going. And that's really one of the big problems that deconverted people always have. It's like, so there's that. You poking people, Earl. Earl's poking people. Wandering roots right here in your apartment. Foul stench. Yeah, there you go. And heard of the one who cursed to live and wander a world until Jesus comes back. It's a real story that they made up. Yes. Actually, that was in what the hell was it? It was in a comic book, I remember. I can't remember which comic book company did it, but it was like they had the wandering Jew that they fed into that myth. I can't remember what that was, but that was one of those early way back in the 80s, I think, where they took some of the mythologies of the time and put them all in one book. It was kind of interesting. So, but yeah.
Where the accounts of Jesus's appearances come from. Cognitive dissonance doesn't directly lead to that. You need to invoke further hypotheses like hallucinations or memory contamination, as I do in my book, where I say that a number of these mechanisms alongside each other can account for the facts surrounding the early Jesus movement. This is a point that apologists somehow just ignore. They're happy to help themselves to cumulative cases. Apparently, the skeptic can't appeal to multiple mechanisms at once. It has to be either hallucinations, someone stealing the body, or cognitive dissonance, or memory distortions. It can't actually.
Yes, this is one of the things. This is why I wanted to get to this part, because James is absolutely making an absolute valid point about apologists. Like, they think that each person who, like, if you're the swoon theory, for instance, well, only people believe the swoon theory. They don't believe in the rest of this stuff. No, there's multiple layers of how human beings work, where you can have like a hallucinogenic experience in Peter. You have people that respect Peter and decide to go along with it, even though they haven't had that experience. When things don't pan out, you have cognitive dissonance kicking in. You have confirmation bias kicking in. Like, all these mechanisms working together to create an atmosphere in which somebody can believe this. This happens in every modern day cult. Like, I can take a modern day cult and there's some initial experience, there's some this, that, some initial idea. And then all of these things is like, yeah, I've got to keep going. It's not just one. Apologists like they play the whack-a-mole game. Oh, I got rid of that theory about, and so until, and only one of them pops up at a time. No, there are several events that you could see could happen in early Christianity. There's a whole bunch of things happening at once. Okay, like this believer believes because they had a hallucinogenic experience. This other believer believes because that person believes it. This other person believes because, yeah, I've invested a whole bunch of time into this and I need to stick with it. This other person says, yeah, this didn't pan out, but I'm going to keep sticking with it because maybe it'll work down the line. There's a whole bunch of very human factors in this, okay? And James is absolutely right. Well done. Okay, and pointing this out, that apologists conveniently ignore this. They're all for cumulative cases with all the cumulative argument for the existence of God. Well, none of them really work completely, but all of them taken together, they kind of lay out a case. And they can see it when it's their shit. But when it's the critics saying, well, wait a minute, all of these things could be working together to create this atmosphere in which Christianity was successful. So yeah. Okay, Shroud of Turin. There we go. Yeah, no, because honestly, the Shroud of Turin is kind of like another example of somebody of this kind of thinking. Like, no matter how much you disprove the Shroud of Turin as being a fake, people still believe in it. It's amazing.
All of these things at once, which I think is the more plausible explanation, because we know that all of these things happen, and all we have to suppose is that they happened in the same context, often triggered by one another.
Martyrdoms of all three, and you defend some qualified comments on the others. So it's a little bit hard. I think cognitive dissonance just doesn't happen. If you're going to make it a side category and you're going to say, oh, this big theory that explains everything can do it, and we know what those would be, elegant hallucination, whatever, so on. And then you want to say, oh, in sub-argument, in dissonance, sometimes people get more excited, so that would maybe help us understand their transformations.
Cognitive dissonance doesn't have to do everything for you. It's one component. And I don't know who would be arguing that it accounts for everything. Maybe someone said that, but Gary hasn't named them. In general, I would say that's not very plausible. It's going to be a component.
With the Jesus Seminar, says either parts of it or the whole creed predate Paul's walk to Damascus. That's first 2 to 3 years. If that read 1 Corinthians 15 with the appearance of 500.
So how long does cognitive dissonance take, Gary? 2 to 3 years? Like, I think that's enough time. Do we have evidence that it needs to take a certain amount of time? I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, that was kind of an odd criticism by Habermas in the first place. Like, a hallucinogenic experience can take place in seconds, okay? And then the person instantly believes it. Cognitive dissonance takes place very quickly. Like, if something comes up that, contradicts what you believe, you can skid around that pretty quickly. It's only maybe later when you really think about it that you need some time to get over it. But it's the idea that there's a time limit with a lot of these criticisms by apologists. It's like, no, oh, they couldn't have come up with all this made up stuff that quickly. And I'm like, have you looked up urban legends? Have you gone to a Pentecostal church? Like, I used to be a Pentecostal pastor. Like, literally, you can have a miracle story just like that. This person got prayed for. They had an emotional experience. Everybody after the service is going, yeah, they had a miracle. Their cancer was cured. And then they go to the doctor 2 weeks later, the cancer's still there. It's like, it doesn't take much, people, for people to believe something miraculous. It doesn't take that much time. It really doesn't. And I don't know where Habermas gets this idea that cognitive dissonance has a time limit or something like that. I just don't get it. So really, Deepopulous? Yeah. So yeah. Okay. There you go.
Dissonance by itself, I don't think it's going to get us to first base. I just don't think it's a good theory.
And some
people go back off the mountain and are more.
Nobody is claiming dissonance by itself. Nobody is claiming hallucinogenic experiences by itself. You can have all these things come together and create a cult or a community. They still do. And the idea that somehow Christianity is an exception to this just boggles my mind. It's just special pleading all over the place. Okay, that somehow Christianity is different. And it's not. It's not.
Dedicated to their faith doesn't mean their faith is true.
We don't know what proportion of Jesus' followers continued with him afterwards. We don't even know whether all of the apostles did. We only have good evidence for a handful. I think Sean has said Paul wasn't an apostle, so don't count him. It's just Peter and James who actually have good evidence that were martyred. We know almost nothing about most of the rest of them. But even if you think that all of the 12 stayed as followers of Jesus, you don't know about the rest of his followers. So what exactly are we arguing here? It has to be a certain proportion in order for the cognitive dissonance to apply. No one said that it's going to apply to everyone. The point is that it applies to some people, and exactly how many it applies to is going to depend on the details of the situation.
Faith was so deep by comparison. The minimal facts are all firm.
Gary, the cognitive dissonance theory would be part of a theory that accounts for the minimal facts. Like, it would account for why there are accounts of resurrection appearances, empty tomb maybe, and belief in the resurrection. Like, cognitive dissonance would be why we saw these. The idea there would be that there's initial belief in the resurrection, which then triggered appearances. My theory actually says it's the opposite, that the belief in the resurrection came after. Appearances in empty tomb led to a belief in the resurrection, but I think it's actually plausible it could have gone the other way around as well. But the point is, either of these accounts are going to account for why we have reports of the appearances and the belief in the empty tomb and the belief in the resurrection. So Gary just saying the minimal facts hold firm, it's just a complete red herring. And of course,
yeah, it's not only a red herring, but I would say that when I look at the minimal facts theory, and I'm going to do a video on this very, very shortly. I've been working on a script for it. My problem with the minimal facts theory is twofold. One, none of those facts actually relate to the actual resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's all like facts around the resurrection, but nothing in those facts proves that Jesus was lying there dead. The power of God came out of him, made him alive, and he walked out of the tomb. None of those facts deal with that moment. They all shoot around that moment like a shotgun, but they don't hit the bullseye. Okay. That's my first problem. The second one is a lot of what those facts are based on is for the Bible tells me so. Like, it's pure grade A hearsay from the ancient world. That's the problem. Okay. That is the problem. And these are the two main reasons why, like, I could sit there and go through each minimal fact, and I have my own problems with each one, just like Paul does, Paulogia does. But I also have my further overarching metacriticism of the minimal facts, which is A, none of them actually deal with the resurrection itself, and B, it's for the Bible tells me so based on hearsay testimony from the Gospels. So you still haven't dealt with those two big meta issues with minimal facts. Okay, it's a great pat you on the back, kind of, maybe kind of sort of it's true if you're already a believer, but if you're a skeptic, they don't do shit. They just don't. Yeah, so how you doing? Yeah, happy. You had your birthday recently too, didn't you? So happy birthday. I think we had that. I posted that last stream. So I you don't, I'm sure you don't want your birthday anymore. It's gotten to be more trouble than it's worth. Kind of like the Klingon gods that I posted on Facebook the other day. More trouble than they were. Oh. You can hear. All right, there we go. There you go. Hang on, listen, keep listening. All right. But yeah, James is doing a great job here, taking this guy down. Gary is not doing well.
A couple of the known facts that would be a particular problem, even if you've got the disciples, would be what cognitive dissonance did Paul have? What cognitive dissonance did James have?
This is a straw man arguing that the person advocating for cognitive dissonance needs to apply that in every case, which they don't need to. We don't have any good evidence that James was a skeptic who converted because of an appearance. This is something I consistently argue for, despite apologists consistently lying about this, even if you take the New Testament at face value.
Yeah, thanks, James, for using the word lying. Okay, like, I'm sorry, there's no evidence that James, even from the book of Acts account, was killed because of his faith. It looks more like a political murder. And if I take Peter's martyrdom by the Romans as factual, that had nothing to do with his faith. It had everything to do with Nero blaming somebody for the fire. Okay. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but it's like the apologists lie about this all the time. It's like, dude, you're lying. Okay. You don't have evidence for that. Okay. And once again, I don't need cognitive dissonance in every believer in the early first century. I only need it in some of them. And then I have hallucinating experience. I have a whole pack of things that this could be all at the same time. Okay. So yes. No, there aren't. That's the problem. That's another, once you get away from the Bible, the evidence gets really scanty. I'm going to tell you straight. There's a lot of people, there's ancient historians, there's like 100 of them that are in the same group that basically believe that Jesus is just as mythological as Hercules. So it's like there's stories about the guy, but there's no evidence for those stories being true. And this is one thing, my biggest criticism of Habermas and his volume 3, none of those people are in volume 3. Like, none of the people that he has, nobody in his Magnum Opus that is openly critical of the resurrection at all. He doesn't have that. He made a claim that he did, but that turned out to be false. That's what this whole video is about from Paulogia, is like he's, skimpy, scant, very little. Okay. And most of it, I would say, oh, so this ancient historian is acknowledging that Christianity existed. So what? Okay. Yeah. But there's that. Yeah. Like, he got blamed. See, there's a whole thing, Elizabeth, there where everybody's blaming everybody for the fire and the Christians got blamed. Okay. And supposedly Peter was martyred at this time, but his martyrdom story is hearsay too. Like, it's absolute crap. Okay. Like, it's like even the stories that they need outside the Bible have question marks over them. Okay. So yeah, there's just like, there's a non-existent nothing. Okay. It's really hard to get good evidence from the ancient world that is hard, like Habermas and Sean here want, and Turek and a bunch of the rest of them want. The apologists are really grasping at straw. They make up a lot of straw man arguments. Like, I'm not saying that cognitive dissonance is responsible for all of the believers believing in the first century and the success of Christianity. I'm saying there's a whole bunch of social things and phenomenon that we know about, psychological phenomena, that absolutely explain the growth of Christianity. Like, they want to make the growth of Christianity a special thing, and that's why it's true. But what about Islam? Okay, what about Islam has arguably risen faster than Christianity. Okay, Hinduism has been around for literally millennia. Buddhism, all these other religions have their own origin story that it completely explains it without any mythology. And most Christians would agree with me until they get to their own stuff. And when they get to their own stuff, yeah, it's an entire army of straw men. Yes. But yes, yeah, it's burger, non-existent, yeah, entire army of straw men. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And what James here is getting at with these guys too.
It just says that there was a time when he was not a believer and the time when he was later a believer and he had an experience. It doesn't say that he converted because of the experience. It just says that he had one. At some point, he wasn't a follower and later he was. To say that he converted because of the experience is just post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. Now, as for Paul, Paul's experience is not explained by the resurrection. I don't understand how apologists have missed this point. It's a totally different thing. Now, I'm not saying that the Christian can't explain it. What I'm saying is they need to invoke additional hypotheses to account for it. It's also not accounted for by the resurrection. It's only accounted for by additional hypotheses about what Jesus did following the resurrection. I don't understand how I seem to be the first person making this point. It seems like I never hear this discussed.
Okay. If you ever listen to this, James, it's not because other people haven't made this point. It's apologists bury this point because they know it's their weakest part of their case. Like they have to have the one explanation be true, especially if they're a fundamentalist apologist. They cannot hypothesize additional theories other than that the Gospels are historically accurate. Okay, so, and these apologists, these mainstream apologists know that those people exist, and so they have to placate them, and they don't dare bring up what you just said. They have, I'm speaking of somebody who was inside the church for a long time. They don't dare bring that up because the moment you bring that up, somebody's going to start thinking about it. Okay, and once they start thinking, they're going to have doubts, and once they get going down that highway, you're going to have a whole lot more people deconverting from Christianity, and you cannot have that. And James, I get you. I don't hear this as often as it should be mentioned by apologists and Christians, because at that moment you're questioning the very essence of faith itself, and they cannot have that. They absolutely cannot have it from a social point of view. They have to avoid it. They have to stick their head in the sand about it, and that's why apologists don't deal with it. They don't deal with that. So, I don't swallow my toilet tissue. Paul was hired to remove Jesus' teaching from the planet. Killing followers did not do it. So inserting false information did the trick. That's a good summary. That's a good summary. But I feel James here. I feel his emotion. He doesn't understand why apologists doesn't bring this up. I'll tell you why, as somebody who used to be inside the church and tried apologetics, the reason they don't bring it up is it will lead to doubt, and they don't want to do anything that leads to doubt. So there you go.
Really irritates me that Christians, the apologists, keep adding in Paul's experience as if it supports the resurrection when it has nothing to do with the resurrection. These things can all fit together very nicely if, again, you think about it for more than 5 seconds. But the apologists here are not honest about this. They just want to bat away any possible skeptical hypothesis. And so they straw man any hypothesis by saying it has to account for everything, as if, because the stolen body, that can't account for everything, we reject that. Hallucinations can't account for everything, so we reject that. Cognitive dissonance can't account for everything, so we reject that. Legendary developments or memory biases can't account for everything, so we reject that. In fact, all of these things need to be considered together to provide a plausible explanation in different combinations and varieties, depending on what you're trying to explain. The apologists wouldn't accept this sort of criticism of any of their arguments. They were always on about cumulative cases and looking at things in context and comparing different passages and so forth. But somehow when the skeptic advocates a hypothesis, no, that doesn't account for everything, so we can just ignore it.
The empty tomb, at best, the origin of the Christian way.
Could not have said that better myself, so I'll let James take his bow for that one. That was a beautifully done, I don't have to account for everything with every single hypothesis I come up with. I can account for parts with this, and I can account for parts for that. I can build a cumulative case against the Christianity being anyway miraculous. And what Paulogia has done is kind of ignite the storm with a very simple naturalistic theory about you only need 2 people with a lot of influence sincerely believing they saw the risen Jesus, and you got a faith. There's going to be people that came in the ancient world that heard their message and didn't believe it, and there are people that came in and did believe it. Okay, that's the point. Okay, and that's true of every religion, cult that has ever existed. Okay, just true. And it irritates the snot out of me that apologists always have this all or nothing thing with every criticism of the resurrection. and they don't want to deal with the fact that this part could account for this and this part could account for that. And James did a very good job there saying that. So
I think you're right. There are examples historically of cognitive dissonance and people sticking with the belief when proven wrong.
It explains far too little. Yes, there are some cases, but it explains far too little. It doesn't get to first base with the minimal facts.
What does it mean, get to first base? What does he mean by that? Gary uses
same question.
metaphors like this sometimes, and I don't understand what he's saying. What is first base with the minimal facts? What would it take to get there? All he said is it doesn't account for everything. It's not supposed to account for everything. It can account for some things.
If you haven't already, subscribe to James's channel.
Perhaps that's enough.
Yeah, agreed. Subscribe to James's channel. I agree with Paul. He kind of does his broadcasts at weird times and his all that, but whenever he does stuff, I've watched some of his stuff. It's really good stuff. So I don't have the link in my description of that, but it's somewhere around there. So there you go.
That's enough, Gary Habermas, for anyone for the time being.
I agree. Let's wrap this up with one last segment.
I think the world, Frank, is full of people who think Christianity looks good. There's some evidences for it. And we often ask about atheists. Frank, you know this as well as anybody. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but darn it, talking to atheists and other strong, especially Jesus mythers, they are frequently very angry.
Oh my God. Oh my God. The flippin' angry atheist argument. Are you a Turek, like having a telepathic moment? Because that's a large part of Turek's argument, is that they're just angry about things. I'm not trying to be rude, but have you listened to some of the theists that have graced me over the last 6 years? Some of those people are pretty angry too. Okay, they're angry that atheists even exist. They're angry that mythicists even exist. I'm not necessarily a mythicist. I actually hear the case of the mythicist and say, yeah, I can see that, but I can also see where there might have been a rabbi named Jesus of Nazareth that said some things, and then his followers took it way too far. And legendary development, blah, 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 and on the list goes. The problem is we don't know. And then all of a sudden Habermas has, this is why I think he wrote the book, because it absolutely, his whole life's work is to reinforce his own incredulity, his own rightness about the resurrection. And he hasn't been honest about the criticisms. And we just saw a major demonstration of that. All that criticism he brought up, cognitive dissonance, all this other stuff, it's like, no, that's not what people are saying. Oh, yeah, evidences. Evidences. Yes, I know. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we have that. Like here. Okay, where am I? I need to check where I am at with my video here. But yes, we have the evidences. Yes, Habermas as Hab the Hutt or Jabbermas, depending on which one you want to use. Yeah, Josh, get bent. Yeah, the whole anger thing just drives me insane. It has always driven me insane. Because when I left Christianity, became an atheist, it had nothing to do with anger. It was like, there's just no facts that back this up. So it's just
go off. I think.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure we all got that part, because we're all atheists and we're angry.
Very angry, and they go off. I think a lot of that emotion is because they're confronted with data that they frankly don't have for their worldview, and they don't like being pushed. And
I don't have a worldview that's based on atheism. Secularism, I have a worldview based without religion, but that's a completely different matter. Atheism is just part of my worldview, and the fact that I don't have a religion as part of my worldview. My worldview is based on a lot of other things that do have factual evidence. In fact, I kind of look for things that have factual evidence to be part of my worldview. Okay, I look for stuff that actually has evidence for it, and not this resurrection claim that doesn't have any evidence for it. Okay, other than a bunch of hearsay back in the day. But no, I'm not. You're trying to get into the motivations of atheists, and once again, I don't remember you, Habermas, talking to any atheists. Like, what is the problem with you apologists actually talking to atheists where you ask them questions about why do you hold what you do and what do you do, all that. Like already we're okay. So now we've moved from lying about our third volume, what it was, because you did, and then lying about all these different theories that you say don't answer the question of resurrection. And now you're propagandizing with lies about atheists. And it's just, it boggles my mind. Now I am mad, Gary, because you're lying. Okay. And it upsets me. I don't understand that. Okay. Yeah. Pot calling the Civil War back. Yes. Yeah. I try to have a worldview based on scientific data gathered. There's gaps in that, of course, because human beings don't have all the information, and I don't know if we ever will. But that doesn't change the fact that I try to base my worldview on something that has real. The reason religion and the God belief are out of it is because there's no evidence for those things. Okay, like we got to get over this mythology, and I think Carl Sagan wrote about this. I'm getting another copy. I had a copy of his book, The Demon World, and I want to reread it again. But I think he was right about this when he said we're supposed to take faith as equal evidence to scientifically based stuff. And he says it's not even the same realm. Like it's not even the same. It's why you have different. It's why you have different types of people sitting on panels now, because somehow I got to give a nod to the religious figure. And I'm like there with Christopher Hitchens. Like, why should I acknowledge this person knows anything about this subject simply because they claim the title pastor or reverend or rabbi? Like, why is that? And I don't know. I'm sorry, Habermas, but you're kind of off. And yeah, me and Paul are going to go on this a little bit, and I'm going to interlace my own experience with Paul's because we're very similar in that. And yeah,
when you push, the more you push, the angrier they get. I think that's what spawns the emotions.
I leave it as homework for the viewer to go through my Paulogia versus Gary Habermas playlist and let me know which of us gets angry and emotional.
And
I've gone through almost everything you've done on this, Paul. I think I actually have touched this. I would say Gary gets more angry than you because he gets mad that anybody would even bother to criticize him. Like he thinks the facts are so overwhelming that nobody should be able to criticize him. And he definitely gets more angry than you. Like you're pretty chill.
Frank, I think that's why most people who, if they walk away, if they say, I don't, those things that I do come to Jesus. Those who say, I don't, I think they oftentimes, I know this because they've told me, when Tony Flew on theism, they say, I've been playing with this for a long time and I think the data are pretty good, but I didn't want to go there. It didn't fit my lifestyle, doesn't fit my friends.
No. Okay, I don't care what that guy said. I have a better probably lifestyle than when I was a Christian because I have a realistic view of sexual desire. I have a realistic view of human behavior, that certain human behavior, like getting angry, that's normal shit. Okay. And for Jesus to say, it's murder. Okay. That's just bullshit. That's taking it too far. I have no lifestyle I'm trying to defend with my atheism because atheism doesn't defend a lifestyle. Okay. It can't. It only addresses one question. Is there a God or not? The answer is no, I don't believe there is one. Okay. I'm an agnostic about that. Give me some evidence there, Gary. Give me some evidence that prove gods exist. No, got none. Oh, okay. But no, that's once again, we're propagandizing. This is very disappointing, Habermas, because I thought you were going to get some, because of the evidence you provided in this series, your Magnum Opus, you would be a little bit more humble about it. But nope. No, everybody that's against me is just angry at God and they just want to justify their lifestyle. Yeah, I don't get it. It's like you've moved into what Frank Turek does with atheists and his book. I don't have enough faith. The more I skim through it, it's like it's propaganda. It's absolute grade A propaganda against atheists, and it's rah rah for the faithful. And now you're doing it too, and it's very disappointing.
that I hang around with. It doesn't fit my blah, 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 blah. And they're saying no.
That doesn't follow for me, Gary, nor nearly any ex-evangelical I've ever spoken to. I was a committed Christian of many decades before.
Yep. Me too. I was a committed Christian of many decades. I have a bachelor's degree in biblical studies and ministry. I have an MA in theological studies from Asbury. Very committed Christian, became a pastor for 20 years, absolutely wanted this to be true. Absolutely wanted to be this true. But I had this real fatal flaw. It's called intellectual honesty. It's called, I look for evidence for things. Okay. And I realized that just saying I believed in it wasn't enough. Okay. And that's the problem right here, is because I didn't go away because I wanted to engage in some lifestyle. I'm a heterosexual man. Okay, still, okay. I'm not embracing any LGBTQ stuff lifestyle. I'm not embracing any sin because I don't believe sin exists, because there's no evidence for sin. It's a made up term by religion. Okay, and so yeah, I'm sorry, the fakeness, the hypocrisy inside the church, that's part of it, because you have to be a hypocrite and say you believe, and then you try to follow stuff, and it just doesn't work. Okay, as a Pentecostal, I had a big time trouble because I knew how miracles and stuff could be faked. Anybody who, watches Leap of Faith, yakety yak, God's talking back. The moment you watch that movie, or you watch the movie Saved, these movies bring up valid points of how all this stuff could be fake and made up. You start, critics that, like Penn and Teller and many others that go and show how miracles are faked and cold reading and all this other crap. This stuff is legion inside the Pentecostal church. Okay. It's fake. It's fakery. Real miracles, real stuff, never could find evidence for it. So, I'm the only one that succeeded the chat goal. Outstanding. I don't know. People love me, BS. It might I love you too, BS, but I'm weird like that. Yes, but yes, I've done well with the chat goal because Ed gets out here and talks about stuff, and I guess people James. Yeah, that's the guy I was trying to remember. Josh was James Randy, and Popoff, or whatever his name was. Figuring out the guy's got an earpiece and was using medical, modern technology to be prophetic. I'm sorry, when you start looking at the fraud and the flaws and the lack of evidence for this stuff. Yeah, it's a hat, obviously. Obviously, Merlin, it's a hat. Everybody's chasing the hat. Everybody wants to put a hat on my head, BS. That's your problem. You need to hey, BS, what you need to do with your live streams is you need to get different devil horns, different styles, and put that in the chat. And see how much people are willing to put a different style of devil horns on BS Lewis. There you go. That's my free idea for you. You can thank me later. Thank me later, BS. Good to see you though, BS. Glad you're doing well. Oh, yes. Well, there you go.
I started investigating the resurrection in detail, and I investigated it not to prove it wrong. I was investigating to prove it right.
Correct. I want to stop there. I taught the life of Christ. And the reason why my questionable witnesses series gets so much ire from Christians is because I'm teaching it the way I taught it when I was in the church, but I'm pointing out the flaws this time. Okay. And I want everybody to understand that. And much like Paul here, Paulogia, I was not trying to dismantle my faith. I was trying to build it up. I was trying to strengthen it. I was trying to put buttresses underneath it to make it better. And it didn't work. And the more I studied the life of Christ, the more I realized, wow, this is just hearsay. It's just straight up hearsay. Yeah, put on some bunny ears. Do something. What you need is bunny ears with devil horns coming out of it. I am sure that exists somewhere on the internet, BS. Yeah, see. He'd pay $10 Australian. He does every stream for me. See, they want the hat. You got to do something silly, BS. That's what it is. That's how I get my chat goals. So, and they are growing. You guys have been much more generous with me in the last 3 weeks than before. And I want to thank you all for that. I appreciate that so much. I know it's also who I am and what I say too, but yeah. The flaws became exposed for me. And me and Paul have a very similar testimony here in the sense of coming out of the faith, because we're both trying to study the resurrection, the life of Jesus, and make it be historically factual. And what we discovered was, nope, that doesn't work.
All my friends, family, and colleagues at the time were believing Christians. By all external measures, I was bearing the fruit of the Spirit. My lifestyle was that of an evangelical, avoiding all the big sins. And if I'd have wanted to sin, I'd have stuck to Christianity where I could be forgiven. This is all part.
Exactly. This is, I'm sorry, what Habermas and Turek and all these people believe about why people deconvert is a load of crap. Okay, it's just it's their own lie that they tell themselves, because then, and how many hats do I have at this point? 6, 7, 8. I have 9. There are some that are holiday based, so I got to get a Christmas one yet, and I have a couple that are 4th of July and Memorial Day and stuff. So there you go. But yes, this is. I didn't want to sin. Like, I was deep into, I don't want to sin. I want to live holy for the Lord. Like, this idea that people just want to sin, or they just want to justify their lifestyle. They're just angry at God. I have been doing a deconversion channel for almost 6 years now. And you know what? Not a single person that comes to deconversion hangout that I know of has said that. Oh, I just wanted to sin. Now, some of them have said, what I was sexually and by gender and all that stuff wasn't the same as what the church said. And I felt uncomfortable with that, but they didn't explore it. They didn't go after it. They waited until after they deconverted to do that. And so what Habermas, Paul and me are lockstep here, because I didn't want to sin. It had nothing to do with that. It had nothing. My whole people around me, I was a pastor. I didn't see any non-Christians hardly at all as a full-time pastor. Like, I had just dealt with people in the church. Okay. That's all I dealt with. Okay. And so for him to sit there and say I was hanging around the wrong people, I was angry at God, what a load of horseshit. That's propaganda. And I'm going to call it that. Oh, look there. We got, let's see. Thanks, Merlin. 5 gifted memberships. Who did we get here? Pete himself. Native Atheist, there's a good one. Al Trucker's a good one. How you doing, Al? I haven't heard about you in a while. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, Gene Grave Runner, Scott Newsom. Oh, those are all good ones. All good ones. Thanks. Appreciate that. The Merlin, outstanding. Well done. Appreciate the gifted memberships. It allows us to keep our emojis going. We have a lot of custom emojis for you members, so you enjoy them. So hey, it's Wolf. Yeah, you're late. I got a little bit more to go, so yeah, those are some good ones. Al's a good one. Native, sure. Pete himself. All these people actually are good ones. So yeah, he was okay. He was definitely a thumbs up. Yeah.
Of othering those who don't come to your conclusion, so that you can represent to your audience that you have this amazing case. If that's
okay. Yes, this is definitely otherism. Like, he's othering the people that don't accept his thing as just angry or whatever. A good scholar welcomes criticism to refine their view. Habermas does not do that. He has always pushed back against criticism. His incredulity will not allow him to accept anything else. It's like, if you don't accept Habermas's conclusions, then you're obviously wrong. On and on the list goes. And the problem is he's now getting pushback from Christians on this. So there's that. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, go right over their heads. It's full bullshit of theists. Yes. Yeah, he was pretty good at that.
It's true. Why do you think that in the 14 years you've been writing this book, so many people have left the faith because of a lack of evidence?
And the more you push.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This push by the apologists, and this isn't Habermas or Turek, it's a lot of them. It's like, all these people are just leaving because they're mad at God. They want some other lifestyle or whatever. that doesn't explain the amount of numbers that are leaving the faith. Like it's funny to me because the country is getting less and less religious, and yet the politicians are continuing right now to empower religion. And it's like, why? Because they're not going to be the majority in a while. Okay. They're going to be a minority. So I don't know. Yes. And you, Mark, you are like almost everybody else I've talked to. I've been running this channel for 6 years. I've talked to a lot of deconverting people, and almost all of them say what you just said. It's a gradual death of 1,000 cuts. The more the evidence isn't there, you come out of it. And so for Habermas to say this kind of things, and I'm glad Paul put this at the end. So, it's there. So it's right there. It's right there. Okay. Like I hear you, Mark, because it wasn't that way for me. I stayed in Christianity far longer than I believed in it. I got into a real pickle at the end because I was a pastor of a church. And for the last 3 years, I didn't believe in Christianity. And for the last 2 years, I didn't believe in God. It's scary. I think atheism scares believers. And it's just by our presence. You don't even have to do anything as an atheist, and it gets them upset. Like, how dare you not believe in something? Yeah.
The angrier they get. So yeah, they say I don't, but Jesus requires it. And the other side is, I'm sure you say over and over again in your atheist, don't have enough faith to be an atheist book. They want to say, I do to me. They don't want to say I do to their spouse or to the Lord.
Okay, first of all, prove the Lord exists. I don't have a spouse right now. I did, but I don't have one now. Okay. I'm sorry. You got to prove that such thing as a Lord exists for me to say I do to them. And you haven't even done that. Okay. And I'm sorry, it's like, oh, we're not good enough because we don't bow our knee to the Lord. Well, I'm done with authoritarian morality. Okay. I want something that's, real, like based on what actually helps the most people. That's kind of where I'm at with this. So, yeah, you just want to sin. Also, the underlying slide didn't really change at all. I just had no time. Yeah, you got more time on Sundays now. I mean, as a pastor, I don't have to go to midweek crap. I don't have to go to Sunday services, plural. I don't have to do any of that. I have much more time on the weekend. I don't have to rush around on the weekend when I'm off anymore. That's kind of nice. So from my other job. So I don't know. Yeah, everybody's in denial. So there you go.
Very happily stayed and let Jesus be my Lord, if I had sufficient reason to believe he is alive. I'd even very happily come back to Christianity if I could become convinced. Not only would this heal many of the strained relationships in my life with the people I love most, but I guarantee that my YouTube channel would explode with Christian support. As one of the lost sheep who came home, you'd probably...
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for saying it. Same. Like I have so many estranged relationships now because I no longer believe. When I run into people on the street here in town that I used to be the pastor of, and they try to talk about me with God, when I go into my family gatherings and they want to talk about Bible and God, and I'm just sitting there silent going, yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Ed Rabyd, the rabid atheist, suddenly became the rabid Christian again, or the rabid pastor, or the rabid theologian again, my YouTube channel would explode with more Christians coming here than non-believers. Okay, he's absolutely correct. One of the lost sheep has finally come home. They love that shit. Okay, if I have any personal side to this, it would be go back to faith. Because a lot of my resources would be back. A lot of my relationships would be back. I'd be on a lot better terms with a lot of people, on Facebook, all that stuff. Like I would have so much more from a social point of view if I just accepted this. Okay. And my channel would grow. I'm sorry. B.S. Lewis was here earlier. I think he might still be here, but if he changed his name to, C.S. Lewis was a great dude, and changed to Christianity, how many followers would he have? Like it's like super duper sheep would be there. Like, it's the Ba effect. Like all of a sudden, Paulogia would grow, I would grow, B.S. Lewis would grow. If any of us switched to Christianity and came back to the fold, the sheep would just flock to our channels. Okay, but I wouldn't be true to myself. I wouldn't be true to anything. That's the point, so.
Even have me on your channel, Gary. It's not that I don't want the resurrection to be true. It's just that I don't find it to be true. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay, and with that, we're going to call this good. But yes, that's kind of the way I feel about it too. It's like if I came back to Christianity, I would have a channel and I could do an apologetics channel and do the apologetic bullshit, maybe with a little bit more strength having been an atheist. If I claim to be a former atheist, there's tons of those guys out there, okay, coming back, all right? And they have channels that just explode. Their former atheists became believers all over the place, and they probably have more followers and stuff than I do. Why is that? Because there's nothing that appeals to a Christian more than somebody who used to be on the other side who comes back to their side. Okay, it absolutely reinforces their cognitive dissonance we just talked about. Well, it is kind of like that. Like the one thing that we miss, okay, as non-believers is the community. It's the one thing religion does really well that keeps people in. Let's be fair. Okay. And yeah, I can do that. I'm not a pastor. I don't claim any authority over anybody in chat, and anybody who tries is that's a fool's errand anyway. But my whole point is to demonstrate that you can have community without having a religious belief. And that upsets people that don't like atheists too. Like my presence alone, like I was listening to a video that like people have more hostility towards Christians that became atheists than people that have been atheists all their life. That's been documented, I believe. But you know what's even worse? Being a former leader in a religion and coming out of it like myself. I get ire from theists who come here and how can you been a pastor and turned your back on faith? I don't know. You just start studying the Bible and realize it's full of crap. Yeah, it's like you don't want to be full of crap too. So yeah, we're not. Well, yeah, that's much more fun than church. Mostly because you guys have no filters. In church, there's so many filters, so many things I want to say. People say, you cuss a lot now that you're no longer a pastor. I said, yeah, because I had to store up a lot of those words because people are dumb. It's like people keep doing the same dumb shit all over again, and you just develop a lot of cuss words, but you can't say them. So I have a surplus still to this day. So I remember she converted back to Christianity because of cultural reasons, not because she thinks it's true. Like she wants to be part of a team. And so she has to become a Christian so she becomes part of the team. That's just intellectually dishonest to me. And she should know better. She should absolutely know better. And I think a lot of people have told her that. Like there's a lot of these people that are joining the, certain teams because they don't want to accept certain things. I said, what the hell does that have to do with anything? So you smoke through a filter? There you go. I think, I don't like forced filters. I think a lot of us have like these defiant disorders too. Like I know for a fact that the lovely Earl has a defiant disorder. Okay. But she's often talked to me about it. I have one too when I reach a certain point. When people try to boss me around, like that's my stopping point. And my bosses at work have learned this. Like just ask Ed to do something. Don't tell him to do it. Just ask him, hey, Ed, can you please do this? And I'll like, oh, yeah, sure, I can do that for you because I want to be a nice guy. But when they want, hey, Ed, you do that or else, yeah, then I'm done. Like I'll go do it, but then I'll be like, I hate you. So you brought up a Jehovah's Witness. I feel for you. I had former JWs in my church, and I have 4 JWs here. Some of them aren't here tonight, but we do have a part of the community. So there you go. Difference is there between Islam and Christian besides the mandatory daily prayers? He does give you a panic attack. I can see that. That was helped by Christianity. I don't see that. My depression deepened because of my Christianity. Like it made it worse. Since I dumped Christianity, I'm dealing with my depression far better. Like I'm much more upbeat than I ever was before. So yeah. All right. Some of you have not seen some of this, maybe, but we do have some new artwork from Earl. This is about a week old now, and we've showed it every time, but I want to show it one more time in honor of Paul of Paulogia and reacting to his video. We did finish it, so that'll be in the next week. I will be probably grabbing some pastor talking about Halloween. And we'll deal with a sermon about Halloween, but we'll do that next week. But I want to get in some of Earl's artwork. Got to remember this is Jabbermass or Haber the Hutt, or so there's that. I want to make sure that people see this. I sent the three I'm going to show you. I sent to Paulogia, and he absolutely loved them. He laughed about them and came up with the name of Jabbermass himself, and we called him Habermas the Hutt, but yeah, Jabbermass works too. So yeah, this is this one. Yeah, she should have gone to a psychiatrist. I agree with you there, Elizabeth. So there is that. Yes, and then this is the newest version of the Unholy Trinity of Fangs, myself, and Earl fighting for truth, justice, and reason in the galaxy. So the fact that Earl so seamlessly joined my night elf self to Han Solo, I have to give her 1,000 head pats for that. That was a great call. I've always related more to Han Solo than Luke at any moment. Fangs absolutely loves the role of Chewbacca. You know, he gets to growl at people and they run away scared. So that's good. That's a positive. And of course, Earl doubling as both C-3PO and Princess Leia at the same time. So there's that. Well, thanks for stopping by, Mark. I appreciate it. So there you go. Yes. But I love this one, Earl. This is my new favorite of the Unholy Trinity. I still love the other Unholy Trinity. It's dark and gothic, but I know most of that wasn't you. It was more AI. This one's all you, and I love it. So for that reason too. So, but yes, help us, Chewbacca. You're our only hope, because Fangs takes the role of Chewbacca. There you go. There might be some truth to that, Fred. Fangs watches over both of us, and I think he's like, oh my gosh, these two are worse than me. And I'm pretty bad. So, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But yes, this is, and then in honor of Paulogia, we put all of this together and we created this one. Earl created this one, and I love this one. I absolutely love this one. Kind of the whole thing of me and Paul versus Habermas is kind of encapsulated in this one. So we got Paul from Paulogia there as the dark invested Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. Doesn't need his saber, just needs his minimal witness hypothesis. Is this your desktop pick? Oh, Earl. Fred has said that this is his desktop picture. Oh my goodness. That's a high honor there, Earl. Somebody putting you on your desktop. Yeah, he's on his book. Yeah, it's the size of his book that matters, not that there isn't. It's evidence this is. So I should have WLC frozen in chocolate. I don't know. What villain would we use WLC as? Oh my goodness. Man, as far as somebody who's a shit apologist who has a lot of people fooled, he's definitely like Senator Palpatine, I think. Like he's getting the look on his face for it. I don't know. Yeah, she can send you the. I'm probably eventually. I like to post some of Earl's old artwork on my Facebook page, but eventually I will get around to posting this one on the Facebook page too. They like to keep the new stuff close to the vest for a few weeks. So, yeah, Jordan Peterson would make a good villain. I think that would work. Darth Lane Craig. I saw it coming. I know my audience. I know the chat. Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth, this is what boggles my mind about her. You know what Islam did to your life. What do you think Christianity is going to do to your life? Same. Same. So, yes. William Lane Craig is Leisure Suit Larry. Could we do like William Lane Craig as a Sith Lord, but wearing Leisure Suit Larry's suit, only make it Sith colors, black and red? Could we do that? Is that legal? Oh, but some of these apologists deserve their characterizations, but absolutely not. I see, even Earl has her limits. Even Earl. Oh my goodness. Straight to jail. We go straight to jail. Okay, I'm sorry. We can't do that because Leisure Suit Larry is probably, his suit and everything is probably copyrighted. So she has limits. I know. We're working on that, Fred. Oh. Oh my goodness. Yes, but yes. Oh, but I still love this one. This has become my favorite of Habermas. And I suppose I got to say, my problem with Habermas and everything he's done with his life is it's also some pastor can have it in his library, this 4-volume library. This great scholar Habermas proved the resurrection in these 4 volumes. The problem is everybody's going to look at the size of the book and go, oh, there's that much evidence. And they're not going to investigate whether it's good evidence. They're not going to investigate whether the counters that Habermas gave to counters is evident. And this picture fits Mr. Habermas so much. Like he's resting so much on his laurels that he's become immovable. And he has to power his books underneath him to move around intellectually and scholastically. So, yes, that's, yeah, so there you have it. So, copyright doesn't matter in satire. Well, okay, we'll see. But yes, Pasco did not collect 200. Hey, Philbert. Gosh, I'm about to wrap up in another 10 minutes. So I'm having fun with chat right now. So kind of come to the end of it. But I absolutely love this picture, Earl, of Habermas. I think it fits. He's kind of like the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland, smoking something if he thinks that what he's done here is a good thing. And I find him intellectually dishonest, standing on this big book of evidences. So it is an attention getter, yes. And yes, so I don't know. Yes. So I think this is one that's going to get some attention, but I'm not mocking Habermas's looks or anything. I'm mocking who he is as a scholar, because I'm sorry, if I was still a Christian, I would have a hard time with his books. It's probably why they're on sale for 50% off on Amazon. I think he's having trouble with sales because there's pushback, not just from atheists and skeptics. There's pushback from Christians, because I think a lot of Christians expected more out of this series of books and they're not getting it. And the last book isn't going to be any better, because the last book is just basically him with his own reflections on the resurrection and why they matter. Okay. And that's, so what? So there's that. Cartoon in Sweden called Annie. They're athletic doc. They were sued by Disney and Disney lost. Yeah. Yeah. You can't copyright ducks. Like, animals get hard to copyright. Hey, you know what? I feel you. And I would rather hang out with my grandkids. Sorry, everybody. But if I got a choice, I'm going to hang out with them. They make more sense than most apologists most days. So Uh, yes, grandkids are number one priority. Yeah, they are. They're great too. They're decent human beings until they get ruined by life. So, so that's kind of what I'm worried about. But yes, so this is great stuff. We have the unholy trinity back in action, moving across the Star Wars universe in an effort to thwart the efforts of Haber the Hutt. So, yes, they really do. They're better people. My grandkids are great people. Like, they're honest as hell, except when they're trying to get in trouble and get away with it. Then they've learned how to lie like a rug. But yeah, it's like they have no filter, and that's probably what's great about them. Much to their parents' chagrin, and of course, I have taken on the grandpa duty of teaching my grandchildren things that their parents don't want them to know. So, so there you go. But it came back later. Yeah, Disney lost. They've been losing lawsuits because it's kind of like copywriting Gravity. That thing about the whole thing with Windows versus Apple, the operating system. It's like Square's files. How do you copyright Gravity that everybody's been doing for years, even in the regular business world? Like, I look at Fangs, and a lot of people go, is that Bugs Bunny? And like, no, it's not even close. Okay, but somebody, like, you can't just sue somebody because they made a rabbit character. Okay, if you have copyrighted rabbit characters, you can't just sue people that make other rabbit characters. You have to prove that, like, they copied your shit, and that gets very difficult. And a lot of copyrights are fading too. Like, I know that, like, the early Mickey Mouse, like the real early first couple cartoons, are now public domain. Like, that character is public domain. So you can do that, but they're not fighting about that. So they don't want people like Apple records versus Apple computers. Yes. Oh. You do a mouse that might be different now. I don't know. There's a lot of mouse characters actually too. I was kind of surprised because when Disney brought up the lawsuits about mice, a few other mice characters surfaced and said, no, you can't do that. Like, isn't Chuck E. Cheese is a mouse character, but he doesn't look anything like him. So, yeah, they do that. They'll bring back characters just before copyright to copyright them again. Yeah, Steamboat Willie is now public domain. So you can look up that cartoon. You can use it. You can use the likenesses in it. So there you go. And that's going to start happening with a lot more frequency over the next couple decades. So I keep looking out for stuff like that's public domain like that because it can be a lot of fun on the channel. So, but yes, there you go. All right, folks, I'm going to call it a day. I have got to get something to eat. I'm famished at the moment. And so I need some food, and you guys have been great. Thanks for everybody who gave today. I want to do this at the end of every stream. Joshua, the Holy Hat Brigade of Antioch. We have One Hat to Rule Them All by Fred. Decibel, we'll talk about, like some sort of growth thing. Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's actually good. It's something I deal with often, is criticism. Autism is a superpower, except when it isn't, from Jova. And Joshua with another one. But Turk's glasses look something like you wear for high production to play racquetball back in the 90s. And here's to reaching the stream goal. And then I have to thank Merlin for the 5 Rabid Atheist memberships. Welcome to citizenship to all 5 of you. You have to subscribe to be a tourist. Everything else, your citizenship is bought. I'm just honest about it, or somebody buys it for you. So every country does it. I'm just honest about it. So there you go. Thank you, everybody, for donating tonight. I appreciate all of you. Shout out to the mighty Philbert for our theme song that you're going to about to hear in a bit, and to the Earl, the lovely I Killed Earl, for all of her lovely artwork that she has graced us with over, it's getting pretty close to a year now, isn't it, Earl? So yes, but thank you all. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate every single one of you for stopping by tonight. And I want to thank Paulogia once again for mentioning me in this video we've been reviewing for the last 3 weeks. I thank you for that. I'll gladly take on Habermas anytime. Anytime, Paul. If you see a fight coming, let me know and I'll join it. But thank you all. May Fangs bless all of you. May he nibble on your hearts. Make sure you leave a carrot offering out to Fangs. Make sure you circumcise that carrot to make it more holy than it already is by removing the tip. Make sure that you take the Holy Communion of any vegetable and any fruit or vegetable juice whenever you think about it, or don't, because Fangs doesn't care, because he's an atheist deity that draws strength from unbelief. So thank you for all that. Nom nom, and may you all be blessed by Fangs. Officially from the hat, wearing the official Holy Bunny hat. So it's an even extra special blessing today. Thank you all for that, nom nom, and all that. And as always, folks, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, your money, your opportunities, and giving them to yourself, the people you love and care for, to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of the religion and faith. That's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by. And I will catch you all next time.
It's time to take a step.